Hey everybody, welcome back to Between the Lines with Lisa Leslie, presented by State Street. Uh-oh, y'all, yay, come on, we need claps because we got a new sponsor and I love State Street. I'll tell you more about that. But Ros is back. Ros, we got to get into it because the last time we spoke, so much has happened. Oh my goodness, the WNBA, when you think like it's not going to get any better, some news happens, some games happen, some overtime happen, like everything. And the awards have finally come out. So we can stop with all the speculation. People have been awarded the awards. And we've got to get into that, Ross, because some areas of this, I feel like the math wasn't mathing a little bit, but then it was. So we'll
Okay.
talk about it. But let's talk about this game one. When you think about the matchup with Phoenix, who pulled off the largest upset, one of the largest upset in WNBA playoff history, coming back from 20 points. It was third quarter. Third quarter, they were outscored by Minnesota 40-25. And
Mhm.
then next thing you know, because it was 59-39, third quarter. And then Phoenix is like, no, ma'am. The engine, Alyssa Thomas, was like not going to be denied. I feel like her fight, her trash talking, she's just like, whatever it takes, I'm bringing the kitchen sink. I'm going to get in your face. I'm going to go for the jugular of Napheesa Collier, and then my teammates will follow. The
Yeah.
fact that they were able to close that lead, what were your thoughts? Did you really think Phoenix could get that game two?
You know what? At first, I did not. I'm shocked, much like Minnesota and their fans were stunned by the
Mm-hmm.
Mercury. I mean, I don't think it's outside of their, capabilities, but more, that's how much I believed in the Lynx. They had a 20-point lead. This is a team that has been there before, has understood closing out games, has the veterans, has the experience. And for there to be just no stoppage of the bleeding, all these veteran players, all these great players that nobody could stop it. And I think because the game really turned to Phoenix Mercury style, they were
Mm-hmm.
able to initiate the contact. They were able to get physical and tough and defensive. You got AT out there initiating contact all the time. She initiates the contact all the time, and she's talking her mess and she's smiling while doing it. And on the other side, the Lynx look, and they said this in the post-game presser. Like they said, Coach Reeve was like, we were uncharacteristic, all the mistakes. We couldn't stop the mistakes. And, Lisa, I want to ask you too. How do you deal with a player like Alyssa Thomas, where her thing is she wants to initiate the contract? She is kind of like, and I say this in a positive way, she is kind of like a bully out there in the way she's going to be physical with you. She will chirp and she's smiling through it all. And guess what? She is actually very talented to back all of that up. Like she got to Phee. They were face to face. How do you
Mm-hmm.
handle when a player has that kind of style?
Well, I faced those type of players. It reminds me of a Natasha Byers back in the day, or Atari Phillips, the players that were just enough girth on them that, like, if we did get into a fight, they may have some strength. You know what I mean? They might be able to get me because they're physically stronger. But here's the deal for me: you always play a player opposite of what their strengths are. Because Alyssa Thomas is so strong, I would never face her up and I would never attempt to try to drive around her. I would do my work without the ball with Alyssa Thomas, get wherever I want to get. When I turn and receive the ball, it would be a simple fake one way turnaround jumper over the top. I'm 6'5" though. So a lot of times you got to think Phee is 6'1" and she's an undersized post player that sometimes we forget how small she is, even though because she
Mhm.
plays so big, she blocks so many shots, she can guard anybody. But she really is closer in height to Alyssa Thomas than a person like myself or a Asia Wilson, if you will,
Mhm.
who's
Mhm.
6'5", or even Aliyah Boston. It's like, don't play her game and try to play physical and back her down. I
Mhm.
would never win that game. But a turnaround jumper over the top all day. And I would find my spots in the paint, outside the paint, on the block. I thought Phee did a great job with the pick and pop shooting over the top. So Phee finds her ways, but she's also used to absorbing contact with that step back fadeaway. But that
Mhm.
fadeaway sometimes Phee makes the contact, you fade away, but you have an AT who's like pushing the contact, which makes your fadeaway just a hair off. Where we're like, oh, Fee's missing a few of those shots that she normally makes because AT makes it difficult. So my advice to all of those post players, playing a player who's as great as I think Alyssa Thomas is, using her strength, using her talking, trying to get into your head mentally, all of that is a part of what she brings to the table because she's undersized, but with strength. You have to counter that with the opposite of what she cannot change. She can never change her height in a game. Therefore, my turnaround jumper over the top, chef's kiss. But I wanted to ask you, when you think about what AT told Holly Rowe at halftime, like she said, quote unquote, she got to guard me too. We good. Now, this was Alyssa Thomas talking about Phee having to guard her. What do you think about? I think the idea that AT is really trying to send a message, plant that seed. Like Phee, I get it. We're both MVP runner-ups, but I need you to know I'm that girl, and I got to go through you to get this championship, and I'm willing to do it. Do you see that message?
I see the message. I mean, she's speaking the message. I mean, it's not even to be interpreted. I think AT has spoken very clearly.
Mm-hmm.
There's no stutter about her. She's speaking in people's faces.
Right.
She literally was face to face in overtime with Phee. And Phee didn't back down, but that's a little out of Fee's character. You know what I'm saying? Like, and actually AT backed away not backed away, but just turned away kind of smiling while Phee was kind of yelling back in overtime. I personally, there was so many different people who read it, when you're watching on Threads or Twitter, watching the game together. And people read it all sorts of different ways. But I just had a chuckle. First of all, Phee is absolutely undeniable as a player, but I just sometimes find myself kikiing because she's so stinking cute. Like, and I was like, okay, Phee. But I was like chuckling. And then AT walked away laughing. And I also think there's so much mutual respect at the same time, too. And then I was like also laughing just in my own personal jokes. I was like, AT better not mess up that Unrivaled. You know what I mean?
Hey.
So I was just, and that's what's beautiful about the WNBA. There's also all these alternative storylines because there's so much going on in women's basketball. But ultimately, to answer your question, when I saw that answer to Holly Rowe, I loved it. That's absolutely the mindset that I expect from AT. Tiring somebody out with your offense is absolutely a strategy too. She ain't here to bow down to Phee. And that's not even her personality. Come here and handle your business. I respect it. And the thing that she got flack for was after in that game where she did that at halftime with Holly, or whenever they did that interview, she actually only had like 2 points in the second half. So you can't do that and then not show up. But in game 2, she walked them down. And so the talk matched the walk.
Yeah. And that's what was interesting because it was like, oh, that didn't really go well because she had 2 points, but then she responded so great. And I think that's a part of greatness in itself too, because everybody wants to play well and you want to do well. But if you're going to talk that talk, you better back it up for sure. And I feel like I was the type of player who, the more she would talk, I probably wouldn't have said one word to her because this is how my relationship even with Lauren Jackson is. Like people talking trash to me, it ain't doing nothing but helping me stay focused every single play. And I think Phee is that person. Phee has dog in her. Like I saw it in her rival. Oh, it's in there. Don't take her quietness for weakness. And I love the way that she carries herself because she keeps it cool, but she like, we can do this however you want to do it. And I definitely graduated from that university. Like I'm gonna play however we playing dirty, we playing straight. However you want to play, I'm here for you. So I feel like Phee comes with that little quiet, like we talking trash, and I'm right here talking trash. However you want to do this, and I love that about her.
Yeah, I mean AT is just amazing, and I really don't know many players whose style of play and personality really becomes the team like Alyssa Thomas's does. Any team she's on suddenly is a physical, defensive, tough team. And it really starts with her. But I think, in these playoff games, I think X factors are really important too. And so like what stood out for me in this game, we knew that Phoenix had the top bench, in the league, but their bench was incredible. They got 25 points off the bench. I just want to call out Kat Westbeld. Okay. She's a 29-year-old rookie. I really like her. I actually had her on my show very recently for an interview. This is somebody who delayed but not denied. Like she lived that. She was overseas for years. After that, she won a championship in with Notre Dame. I want to say like 2018 or something. Anyway, doesn't make it to the pros, plays overseas all of it, even took a desk job as like a
Wow.
data analyst or something, like had a real job right out of the pandemic. Then decided like, yo, I still need ball. Went back to ball overseas, and finally, like the WNBA opens up to her this season with the Phoenix
Mhm.
Mercury as a rookie, and like I think her faith is what stood out to me the most. And obviously, she's the sister, the older sister of Maddie Westfeld. And they also both come in as rookies together. It's a beautiful family story. But
Yeah.
anyway, like for her to come off the bench and what was her stat line? 8 points, 4 rebounds, 4 steals. That changes series, you know? On top of like obviously Sammy Whitcomb did great, but I thought the bench and Kat were real X factors.
Yeah. And I agree with you. When you look at the bench, now Sammy Whitcomb is a player that I always loved. Like she's a
Hmm.
shooter, she's a pure shooter. And some teams need pure shooters, but the fact that Sammy can shoot so quickly, her release is like, and she's a bucket. I love that on one of the interviews. They said after the shot, the broadcaster said tracking showed Whitcomb had 15,000 practice shots this year. Honey, let me tell you, Sammy was like, excuse me, actually, the number is 20,000. 20,000 shots. You know how they can track the players shooting. So the fact that you put in the time, in the work when
Yeah.
nobody's watching, the
Yeah.
jumper was so pure. She had 13 points. I just love the fact that, like you said, the team, the bench. This is one thing, and Roz, we talked about this at first before the playoffs started, actually. When you think about how many games it could take, possibly 15, right, to get to a championship, the team with the depth is going to be so key. And I feel like with Phoenix, even though we hadn't talked a whole lot about them all season long, they're just quietly chipping away. I find them to be very dangerous. Now, can they continue to take Minnesota out? I think Minnesota probably feels like they gave up a game.
Hmm.
But here you go. You're going home. You're going home. You did your job, 1-1. You so one out there. When we get to this next series, Indiana, another place, tough to play in, tough to
Hmm.
play in, tough to get wins in. So it's going to be interesting to see if Minnesota, again, they don't usually lose 2 games in a row. You know, they're one of
Hmm.
those teams. Can they go into Phoenix and even back, not even up series, but really still a game? Because you got to go on
Yeah.
somebody's court. In order to win a championship, you got to win on somebody else's floor.
Oh, for sure. They got to get one on the road here. But okay, so a few things I'm looking at, because you would say the chemistry factor, the continuity factor, that should be in favor of Minnesota, who's
Minnesota.
running this thing back with mostly all of their team.
Hmm.
So something that I thought was an interesting story coming out of this series was how Phoenix, with all these new players, a relatively new coach, a lot of different, just a new era over there.
Hmm. Hmm.
Um, how they on these plane rides that have been cross country. Their road to the playoffs has been tough. They've been going from uh
East to
Phoenix to
west.
New York to
Hmm.
Phoenix, now Minnie back to Phoenix. Like these are long trips. And I was reading something and it was like that they've been playing Uno on these
Hmm.
plane rides and that it's very intentional. Like you heard Collier Copper saying, we don't take the plane rides for granted. I said,
Yeah.
boy, these is a group of vets that said we are going to bond during
Hmm.
the playoffs and we're going to get closer and tighter because yeah, they might know each other and have played with each other for a couple years now, but we going to make that up over a game of Uno. I just thought that was real. That stood out to me. I was like, these are some vets. These are, they got youthful players, but yeah.
But team bonding is everything. And I can tell you as a retired player, the things that you remember most, almost other than wins and losses and championships, of course, is the time that you spend with your team on the bus and on the plane. Like all
Yeah.
of the laughs that we have, all of the stories, all of those moments, all like culminate into this one thing that when it comes time to win and having a person's back out there on the floor, that trust level goes up so high. That chemistry is so important. And the bench play, right? Because you don't win a championship alone. You need everybody. And so I
Mhm.
love the way that Phoenix is like, even their huddles. If you saw as they went closer to overtime, the huddles got tighter. I mean, their little hugs
Ooh.
was like hands around everybody. And people don't understand that is called synergy, right? It's like, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
you want to have positive energy, but synergy is something that we do when we connect. And when you connect in that way, like you're bonding. So I love to see how Phoenix was able to bond in that moment when you're on the road, and that can mean something later. But if we look ahead, when you look at Phoenix for game 3, what are the biggest things Phoenix and Minnesota need to focus on?
Yeah, I think for me, I was actually thinking about keys for game 3, and it's actually universal. Like, this is for both teams, got to watch these battles. I got 3 battles for you. I think
Okay.
win the physicality battle, like, and the toughness battle. You don't necessarily have to, if you're the Lynx, you don't necessarily have to be out there playing outside yourselves, but
Mhm.
you sure got to match the toughness and intensity battle. Don't let, the Mercury be the ones throwing swinging the punches at you only.
Don't get
Then
punked, basically.
exactly. Yeah. Like you said, Phee, the Lynx, those are not punks. Those are highly competitive, talented. I think they're a very good team. And then the
Yeah.
other battle I'll talk about, I think the possessions battle was really important in game 2 and will continue to be in game 3. Turnovers and costly
Ooh.
offensive rebounds ended up being the difference. The
Yeah.
Lynx were turning it over. That shot that Sammy Whitcomb hit to tie the game up came off of an AT
I'm a,
offensive
yeah,
rebound. She
I
got 2
know.
looks at
Gosh.
it. And then I'll throw one more battle of the bench. So we talked about how good Phoenix's bench was, but
Mhm.
also not only were they good, the Lynx's bench was uncharacteristically bad. Natisha Heidemann can't come up empty-handed. This is your 6th Player of the Year candidate. Like, you need her.
Mhm.
What's her name? Kalindikova. She didn't have a great game. Both of these teams as units are really good. So I'm looking at that battle as well.
We could go on and on about the amazing Minnesota Phoenix matchup. We're gonna get our popcorn ready for them, but let's change directions because Las Vegas Indiana series is tied up 1-1. And baby, when I tell you, I was surprised at the beat down Indiana gave Vegas in Vegas. I was
Hmm.
surprised. What was your reaction to that first game 1?
You know what? I wanted to ask you this. This is something that I really had on my heart. So I was watching game 1, but also all of the content that was coming out of that game. Before the game, Asia
Oh yeah,
Wilson is given the MVP award, right?
yeah.
And child, they had her parents come out there, they had her man come out there. They did she's overwhelmed and emotional. Then they got content of her reading letters from every single player on the team. She's crying, everybody's crying. People, they love, one thing about the Aces locker room, they do love some tissue. They be like crying and they're out of love. Like, they are
Yeah,
so
yeah.
emotional as a team. And so it's such like a high. It's such emotion coming out of Asia all day, and the team, everyone's sharing in it. And a couple hours later, you play the game. Like, you've received 3 MVPs. What is it like to get this award? And can you possibly be drained by the time you get to a playoff game after all of that emotional stuff?
You can. Back when we won MVPs, and it might be different for every person winning an MVP because they change rules, styles of what's happening. But we had a press conference. Back then, they gave us I had a car. One or two of the years, like I had a car and the keys and the MVP presentation. Dress cute, and then I got to go change and have the award presented on the court. It is a lot. But I do remember when I see the pictures of me on the court, I'm so serious and locked in and focused. Like I'm
Mm.
like my MVP trophy photo is not cute. Like because the trophy is heavy, and you're like trying to raise it up. One picture, one picture. Here, hold this because I gotta go hoop. You know what I mean? So it's like the mindset of it without social media was a lot. I can't imagine all that they did. I saw all that footage, but I never realized. You think that was still game day?
Girl, it had to be because the award, she couldn't get those notes before getting the award.
I mean, I just can't imagine doing all that. So it would make sense why Asia probably wasn't why she had an off night, which would be like a normal night for everybody else. She had 16 points. But
16
baby,
points.
Yeah.
13 rebounds, 4 blocks. Now, she didn't shoot it at a high clip, but god damn, she still was really
Right.
pretty
That's her off night.
productive.
That's what I'm saying. It's like everybody else is trying to get those numbers, and her off night is 16 points. So I say that loosely. But it is very difficult on the day you receive your MVP trophy to do all of the things that is asked of you. But you're happy to get that moment, happy to share it with your teammates, of course. But all I can tell you is game one, Kelsey Mitchell was cooking,
Phenomenal.
baking. She was doing all of the things in the kitchen, which brings me to the question though, Roz. Kelsey Mitchell has carried Indiana Fever. I mean, Aliyah Boston has been, she got the back. She holding the legs, you know what I'm saying?
Right,
But
right.
Kelsey Mitchell has been carrying them. And is she going to run out of gas? There is a lot of games to be played. 1-1, and you playing against Vegas, who's the hottest team in the WNBA. I look and I go to game 2, and I'm like, Kelsey Mitchell she's at some point she's got to run out of gas. Like that's a difficult task to slow her down. But how physical she plays, how active she is, she's always on the floor, and she's guarding sometimes the best defender as a two-way
Mhm.
player. I mean, what are your thoughts just on Kelsey Mitchell, and will she be able to like make it through the series?
One thing I have learned about this Indiana Fever team and Kelsey Mitchell is you do not count them out. My goodness, how many
Yeah.
times have they had moments this season where you said, okay, it's done now? Like, all
Yeah.
right, that was a nice run. Absolutely respect to them, commendable effort, but like they can't overcome this new hurdle or this new injury or they don't have it. Look at all the players that have lost. And they just keep finding ways. They just keep putting a new person in, a new guard in,
Yeah.
and now they got a having an all career type season once they
Come
come
on,
in and
Odyssey Sims. Come
come
on.
on, Odyssey Sims. That's exactly who I was talking about, and
Yes.
thinking of, and I think that the kudos goes to the entire team, to Stephanie White, to
Mhm.
what's undeniable in Kelsey Mitchell. Um, I just feel really happy for Kelsey Mitchell to be starring in this moment, to be getting her flowers. This is somebody, I thought there was a beautiful quote from Stephanie White who said she's been here in Indiana for the worst of times. She should be able to
Mhm.
enjoy the best of times now. And I've spoken with Kelsey Mitchell, who told me she remembers when there was no one in the stands. Like she can
Mhm.
absolutely have that perspective. So it grounds her in a really humble way. Like humility, she pointed to. I asked her, what's helping you this season? She said humility. That was the word she used.
Mhm.
And she said, it grounds me to see the attention we're getting now. She's humble. You see her doing interviews. She's talking up her team. She's talking up her coach. And
Yeah.
lastly, I thought one of the things that have moved me, this is also another emotional team. There's all sorts of tears happening in their locker room and press conferences because they've been through a lot. But this is what got me. Recently, she said that the pairing with Coach Stephanie White, it was so meaningful for her to have someone that believed in her like that. And she said she
Yeah.
hadn't had that since her father. Remember last season, she was mourning the
Yes.
death of her father. And that was a really important, like, influence on her life. And
Yeah.
so for her to go through such a tough year last year and to just be out here flourishing, to have the right coach, to have this team that has so much heart, like it's really hard. It's very easy to get behind this Fever team. Like in the sense that like they're very inspirational, you
Yeah,
know?
I agree. I said this was the first playoff game where Indiana lost the first quarter, which was game 2
Mm-hmm,
versus the
mm-hmm.
Aces. Now, Nalyssa Smith,
Wow.
baby, she
Wow.
came out with a huge performance, 18.7 rebounds. And I feel like if she can continue to play like that, that gives Vegas like 3, 4 options, but that backup option to what Asia's doing and if she could just be Nalyssa Smith, consistent with that fight, that heart, her defensive presence, it's going to be tough to stop Vegas because I think her matchup um, going against Indiana, she presents that presence where, you have Aliyah Boston battling. Her hands are full with Asia. She's doing the best that she can. She's trying to be a pest. She's out there. But then you have Nalyssa Smith who can be that X factor, taking it to Natasha Howard, getting inside. I love that matchup for them. She's that player that I feel like, because before it was sort of, I was kind of feeling like Jewell Loyd is the X factor. Like she's got to come to play.
Mhm.
She's got to be scoring. But does she now? If Nalyssa Thomas, Jewell Loyd, either of those players, Ross, either of those players put up some numbers, it gives Vegas such an opportunity to be really competitive. And so, anyway, sometimes I get really excited when I see players who
No,
like the flashes of what they could be if they can find the consistency to be that next level.
I agree with you. And like we was talking about X factors in the last series, I think all of them. Like I think the X factor for Vegas is the rest of the team going to show up too? Because in
Mm-hmm.
game 2 it looked way different. You had Jewell Loyd who scored, 10 points, double digits off the bench, Dana Evans, Nalyssa Smith. I mean, when you're going to get 18 points and that kind of efficient shooting, 7 for 9 from the field, 8 or 9 rebounds, whatever it is that she had, it's going to be
Mm-hmm.
hard. On top of everything else Asia is bringing on both ends. Asia's blocks were phenomenal, but I think when the team is locked in on top of what Asia has now, the Aces are so different and their
Mm-hmm.
defense was better too. The issue with them in the first half of the season is defense in spurts, and it just really was not strong. This is something that Coach Becky Hammon was calling out over and over again. And in game 2, you saw and after game 1, she called out their lack of physicality, intensity on defense. They were much more locked in as a team
Mm-hmm.
defensively. And to your earlier question about Kelsey Mitchell, they held her to 4 for 14 from the field. So I think like an X factor for the Aces is like, yo, is everybody going to come together and do it together? And I'll also point out Chelsea Gray. Points, didn't have the most points, but she had 10 assists. I think it's important when she stirs the pot. Like she made a
Mm-hmm.
lot of those Nalyssa Smith plays happen.
Yeah, absolutely. Point guard doing point guard things. And it has been interesting watching Chelsea Gray because I feel like she's been really quiet this season. And even, we talked about Chelsea Gray before, it was like fourth quarter Chelsea Gray, the closer.
Mhm.
She's just sort of been a little quiet,
Were you
but
surprised after the
steady.
unrivaled season she had? She was
I
crazy.
was. I was, especially when they struggled in the beginning. I was like, "Oh, what's up, Chelsea?" Probably, but I don't know if she how she feels. If she felt a little fatigued, but I've been surprised. I haven't checked the numbers completely. Are her numbers down? But it feels like we haven't said Chelsea Gray point guard stuff as much as we usually do throughout a season. But
Mhm.
it's still the playoffs, and we know playoff Chelsea is another breed, and she's going to do what the team needs. And right now, maybe being the facilitator, Chelsea might be like, I need to get this player going in order for us to have success. And that means sacrificing myself. And I would trust that for her because she's such a strong player. Headed
Mhm.
into Indiana for game 3. Now, in Indiana, I think Indiana is probably, there's a few gyms that I think about that when I played, that were the toughest places to play. And not necessarily just because like putting the ball in the hoop, but just the whole setup.
Mhm.
Indiana and at that time, Sacramento for me. Indiana is one of those gyms where the people are like all up on you. It's a vibe. The crowd is really like into it. Do you think, looking ahead, game 3, what are the biggest things Vegas will have to do in Indiana if they want to get the win on the road?
I think it's going to have to start with defense again. They're going to have to be able to contain, Kelsey Mitchell penetration and all the way she can score. Again, I think one of the keys for them is just everyone engaged.
Mhm.
And for the Fever on the other side, I think taking care of the ball is going to be
Yeah,
really important for them. What about you?
yeah. I think the same. I feel like for the Fever, Aliyah Boston to me needs some specific touches that I don't see them being. What's the right word? Like the way that Vegas makes sure Asia gets the ball, I feel like something needs to be more intentional of getting Aliyah Boston touches. I feel like she's out there and yes, she's facilitating, she's doing things, but I don't feel like there's anything that's super intentional for her. And I think they need to focus on that more. Can you get Asia in foul trouble? Probably not, because she does an excellent job of playing defense without fouling, but
Mhm.
maybe having more opportunities for Aliyah Boston to get more touches, I think is a good thing for Indiana. I think secondly, they play so well at home. I love that I love that Lexi Hall shot the ball so well that she can
Mm-hmm.
continue to score and be involved. Listen, Kelsey's Kelsey. So Kelsey Mitchell, I doubt that she's gonna make just 4 baskets in this next game. So I think that they continue to do what they do. I love their offense and the way they move the ball, their backdoor cuts, all of the efficiency that they bring to the game. If they look at game one, that's the way that Indiana wants to play. And I'm sure they'll watch a video and go back, but that's what they want to bring to it. It's really been, I think, exciting watching Indiana, their style. And you're so right. All these new pieces, even when aerial powers come in, like, I mean, they just got some pieces that are like dogs. They're exciting. They come in, their defense is on point. So I really like watching Indiana, but it's going to be really interesting to see if Vegas can find a way to execute their offense and also play some solid defense and get some stops and get a win in Indiana. So it's going to be exciting. We don't know. Popcorn will be ready though.
Yeah, we will be sad.
We'll be waiting. It's time for our State Street segment. This episode of Between the Lines with Lisa Leslie is brought to you by State Street Investment Management and SPY. State Street knows that getting there starts here. Today, we're going to talk about how the Minnesota Lynx arrived at this moment. Just quickly, the Minnesota Lynx were the dynasty in the 2010s, 4 titles between 2011 and 2017. I mean, they were dominating. You're talking about the great Lindsay Whalen, Maya Moore, Simone Augustus, and of course, big Sylvia Fowles. But as those players started to retire, obviously move on, and now Hall of Famers, new players came in like Napheesa Collier, who had a chance to play with Sylvia Fowles, who got a little bit of information. But the one steady person who's been there through the dynasty and right now, as the Minnesota Lynx are back at the top, is Coach Cheryl Reeve. And again, thanks to Cheryl Reeves, you have Napheesa Collier, who's clearly Defensive Player of the Year last season, trying to get them back to winning a championship. You have Michaela McBride, McBuckets, as we call her. Was acquired in 2021 and signed and traded from Las Vegas. And now she's doing great with her 3-point shooting and being so aggressive. Nalyssa Smith signed into 2024 free agency after breaking out in Chicago, adding her, and now she's the co-defensive player of the year. And we can't ever forget about one of the stud buds. That is Courtney Williams, who we know signed in 2024 as a free agent, coming from the strong Connecticut, Atlanta, and Chicago. She brings so much fight. So when you look at all that Cheryl Reeves has been able to put together, it's going to be really exciting. Can Minnesota do it? I don't know if they can, but this is definitely how they got here, and maybe they might get back to the top. And when you look at these players and all of the movement that has happened, the trades, the signing, I'm going to ask you, Ros, which one of these moves do you think, if you can just pick one, was the most underrated and how the Lynx got to being the number 1 seed competing for the title?
I think what Cheryl Reeve has done with a number of these players, what I think about the Lynx is every single one of these players is starring in their role. I would point to bringing Nalyssa Smith and Courtney Williams over from Chicago to the Lynx, and now Courtney's an all-star and Nalyssa Smith is a defensive player of the year. Talk about fit, talk about the right coach. If I had to pick one, I'm going to go with Nalyssa Smith, because this is someone who in 2022 was literally out of the league, like had been waived, was playing overseas, I believe in Australia, and like found her way back. Wasn't her whole run was unceremonious in the WNBA. And
Yeah,
then you find the right fit and coach with Coach Reeve, and she's the co-defensive player of the year this year. This is someone who wasn't in the league for a season. So I
crazy.
think that's got to be, the story that, you point out.
Okay, so do you think this will influence? Because Cheryl Reeves is also the GM of the team. Like, I think she's the GM. She might be the president too. I don't know. She got a lot of hats, but she's in control of what's happening over there.
She's the emperor, the czar. Like, they got her wearing everything.
She is in control, baby. Let me tell you. But do you think that this will influence how other teams build their teams for the future?
Talent goes a very long way, but we heard from Ohema out in the Bay. She was talking about, we're looking for good quality people, and you'll hear that from GMs saying like, character matters to them too. And I do think that character translates on the court. I mean, talent is, going to trump that, but I think if you can get the combination of those types of players, that goes a long way. I do think we're going to see continued separation of these roles, and it'll be, I think it's really rare to see one person holding all of the responsibilities. The game's just too dynamic. There's too much going on. There's too much at stake. I do think you need someone who's like dedicated to, putting a roster together, but also that there's synergy between all the decision makers. That is what can make or break a franchise.
It's tough. Well, listen, Cheryl Reeve's having the number one team. She's probably found a way to get along with herself.
Right. I think one thing that Cheryl needs all her flowers for is the sustained success over the course of rosters, turnover, changes, eras, styles of play. There was a transition of focus from team to team, right? Like it might have been Simone and Lindsay leading the way. Then it started to center around Sylvia when Maya left. And then so Big Sil had to learn how to, take on that role. And then there was a transition of power to Phee, you know what I'm saying? And Sylvia, Big Sil, Mama Sil was really instrumental in helping Phee along. Remember, Phee came back early from pregnancy to catch the end of Sil's career. So, look at a coach who some coaches is just as good as their best player is, but not Cheryl Reeve.
You know what's amazing about being a part of a dynasty is that you think that time's going to end, but you have to really give Cheryl Reeve her flowers because she's been able to build that back up. And that's what I love about their organization. Number one, it's a connected organization where you've had veterans connecting with young players and helping bring them along the way. I thought they did such a great job of connecting. And when you connect the dynasty, those of the old, if you will, the past, with the present, and you allow them to be in the same rooms and nurture one another and exchange information, this is what you get. You get a new group who's bringing in that era and the possibility of reaching a dynasty again. So again, this story is not just about stars and star power, but it's about having the right fit, building the right chemistry, and bringing people together. It's about trust. It's about loyalty. And Cheryl Reeve and the Minnesota Lynx have been able to build that. And that's how the Lynx got here. Okay, this is one of these seasons where it started out where Phee was running away with MVP. Everyone talked about it, including myself. She had our vote. She was dominant and dominating. And then the turnaround happened. The aces climbed. Asia rose to the top, and not just with her points. It was her points, her rebounds, her blocks. And we just really saw something change when it came down to these awards down toward the end. Let me just say, Napheesa Collier had an amazing season, the second player ever in the history of WNBA to have the 50-40-90, where she shot 50% from 2-point range, 40% from 3-point range, you guys. Like Steph Curry shoots 43%. 40% is sick. And then 90% from the free throw line. And at the end of all of that, Asia walks away with the MVP, and the votes, not that close, which is also interesting. Asia had 51 first place votes. Phee had 18 votes. Just Ros, just that alone. Were you surprised?
I wasn't surprised. I thought Asia was probably going to end up winning it. What I would say is I was more surprised with the media because there was a point where Phee was the clear favorite. Like it was her. The narrative was it was her award. So for the media who had the vote to watch a body of work over the course of the season and clearly pivot, I mean, it must talk about how compelling Asia's case was. And 51 of 72 media votes. I mean, that's almost 72% of the vote. This was not close. It was a landslide in many ways. And here's the thing too. By the time Phee got to that very impressive 50-40-90, it was the last game of the season. Like a lot of voters might have already had their mind made up, may have even submitted their votes by the last game of the season. I think it was the very next day that votes were due. And there wasn't enough time to even develop the storytelling around that in some ways. You know what I mean? And because that is a very compelling stat. But here's the other side of that. Did you know that Asia damn near had a 50-40 season herself? She shot 85% from free throw. That's what held her back. Check her stats. Like,
Check the stats. Oh my gosh.
like,
No, I
like
didn't know
she,
she was that close.
she shot above 50% from the field, above 40 from three, and I think 85% from the free throw line. She damn near had that too, on top
Wow.
of being number one in points and number, one in blocks and number two in rebounds and stocks and all these other things, and led the league double doubles
Look.
and 30-point games and 20-point games, dragged the Aces to the 2 seed. Like,
Give me
you
the
couldn't even
snaps.
do, you couldn't even talk about like, oh, well, Fee's team is, she's on a winning team. Like, by the end of it, you was talking about team one and team two. Like,
That was my point. I'm like, but wait, no, but their team is number one. And Vegas is at number 8. Like, it's crazy to get all the way back to number 2. Bro. It was
it was really hard to argue it. And then, like, there's also the eye test. Sometimes these voting things, you start manipulating numbers and you can make any argument you want with these analytics. I came up watching basketball, playing basketball. I have been around some great basketball in my life. Lisa, you are literally Lisa Leslie. Like, sometimes, as part of my evaluation, is the eye test. Am I looking at the person who's like the most dominant, or like, like you can see that? And then importance to team is very important for a lot of people with MVP. And you easily could say, like, if Asia wasn't on the Aces, what would happen?
yeah.
And so but the only thing I don't like about that is it can penalize Phee for being on a team that can win without her. I don't think that's her fault, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. Good point.
So anyway, but it's just it became such a compelling case for Asia down the stretch.
It did. Okay, so let's move over to the co-defensive player of the year. Now, everybody was chopping my head off when I say the word co-anything, whether it's defensive player of the year or co-MVP. Everybody's like, no, you just got to pick one. But here we are with A'ja Wilson and Alana Smith winning co-defensive player of the year. Now, what was your first reaction to this?
I think that it really did show philosophies. Like, Alana Smith, anchored the best defense in the league. So, you'd be probably looking at who's the best defender on the best defense. And for me, that was tricky. And actually for Becky Hammon, it was too, because Becky said, I understood what Becky was saying when she was like, last year you guys told me Phee was the best defender, and now this year she isn't. So all of a sudden y'all created some narrative around it being Atlanta. But I think the thing with Atlanta is you have to watch the games and see how this girl comes over from help side, or how she is, changing or blocking shots of the person she's on, or how she impacts the quality of the defense when she's on the court. I say all this to say, look, Asia is just incredible when you see the way she can block the ball, or how her blocks can turn into transition, or you see the way, like, her actual stats defensively are so dominant. Like, when you put the stats next to each other, there were a lot of people who did that and they felt like, how is this a comparison? So
Come on,
um
Raj, you're making it cute, but I'm like, the math was not
go
mathing to me. And
go
Asia blocks look like my blocks, and all my blocks go with get that shit out of here. I feel like Asia's blocks goes with get that shit out of here. So I don't know. When I look at the numbers and I say 10 rebounds, 2.3 blocks, and you lead the league in blocks. And then Atlanta's was 5.1 rebounds and 1.9 blocks. I'm just saying the math. I am happy for Atlanta because it seems like, one, everybody loves to win an award. And,
Mhm.
you're right that her team is number one defensively. I just felt like the math wasn't mathing, because every time I bring up co, people were like, Lisa, stop saying that. There ain't no co.
Mhm.
It's one person gets to get the award. And I'm like, oh, okay. But it says that on the votes, they both got 29 votes. That's a lot of votes for it to be a split. That I guess that's
Absolutely.
why it's co defensive player of the year.
And look, Asia still gets to be MVP and DPOY. This will be the second time she's done that now. Did it in 2022.
Yeah.
So it's like, in a way, I mean, nobody wants to share, but both are very beautiful stories as well. Like, Asia, just her will to not give up after a hard first start for the season for the
Mhm.
Aces, and then Atlanta being out the league and then finding her way to DPOY is also a really compelling story too. That's the storyteller in me. But girl, I understand all the
I
points you're
guess.
making.
It just wasn't adding up. I'm just saying, if we pull up the stats, it just okay. But
Right, right,
congratulations
right,
to
right,
both.
right. So do you think that there's Asia fatigue? Do you think there's Asia fatigue to her
I'm just saying, if
excellence?
we're gonna look at the numbers and let the numbers tell the story, then we got to stay with the story. Every single vote, every single award. That's all. It just
Yeah.
okay. Let's talk about coaching instability. Last
Hmm.
topic I think we need to talk about. Last season, over 50% of the coaches were fired or let go. Teaspoon, Tanisha Wright, Kurt Miller, Eric Tebow, and more. I mean, I could list so many coaches, but after the regular season this year, Noelle Quinn and Sandy Brondello has been fired. Which also, with Quinn being fired, we'll talk about Sandy Brondello because I know you know more about that. But with Noelle Quinn being fired, there are no Black female head coaches. What are your thoughts on that, Ross?
Well, I think it is eye-opening to have no representation of the league that is majority Black women.
Mm,
I think also last year's all those firings, um, to me signaled that there was a lot at stake and the league was figuring that out. Suddenly they were in an arms race for facilities. Suddenly they were in arms races for coaches. Everybody recognizing that teams were going from, $20 million valuations to 300 million, 500 million. So now everybody's serious. They're bringing in people over from the NBA. Now, I think it's very important to have that representation. I also think once Black women are in these seats, whether that's at the corporate world or as coaches, oftentimes, like, are we getting the right support once we're there, the right nurturing, the right leash, the right communication and feedback? We
hmm
can case study how Teresa Weatherspoon was handled in Chicago as an example of it. And clearly, there, it was not the right
Right.
case there. But I'll give you a case study on the other side. There was a lot of um, feedback about the hiring of Nate Tibbetts in Phoenix. He's an
Mhm.
NBA guy. There's plenty of qualified, women that could have this job. It's a women's league. And he was brought in, highly qualified from the men's side, and he's had great success early. So I think,
And he was
one,
the highest paid too.
oh, really? So one, well, pay equity and gap is something we can absolutely change.
hmm
And should it, and a women's league should not be lagging behind in anything like that. Like, it shouldn't even exist. But I think you go for the best coach, but I think, like, there's got to be ways to keep an eye on, support, foster, like, the representation of the league. And I'll throw that to you, Lisa. You've been a player. Like, does it matter to you to play for a Black woman coach? Is it more just about who's the best coach? Like, what do you think?
Honestly, I don't think I've ever thought about that as a player. You definitely want to have a coach that you feel is competent in what they're doing. I unfortunately have had 8 coaches when I played for the LA Sparks in 11 years. So to see the revolving door of coaches is very disappointing and disheartening when you are on a path to try and win championships. It's very difficult to do. Hence, the teams like a Becky Hammon or a Cheryl Reeve, who's been at the helm, leading the way, and has opportunities to have success and also failures, but to still be able to ride that because you're not going to win every year, which also makes me think of Sandy Brondello, like a
Mm-hmm.
player, a person who was a player and a coach, but to see a coach have so much success everywhere and in Phoenix
Mm-hmm.
and then in New York, to win a championship, the first ever championship, to have a season this year with players injured throughout the whole season, to never really have your full squad. And yes, to lose in the first round or second round of the playoffs, it was first round, yeah, that's a bad season. But to fire a coach of that stature for the first time, because the Liberty, the new ownership has been outstanding. I really love
Mm-hmm.
everything that they've
Mm-hmm.
done, top to bottom. But this is probably the first mistake that they've ever made, unless
Mm-hmm.
players were really unhappy, which I have never heard.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent coach. When you lose your coach, you are resetting the whole system. Why?
Mhm.
Because a new coach has to come with a new staff, with new plays, and possibly a new culture, a new and everybody doesn't necessarily have a winning culture. A coach can come in, you can get a coach, but to bring a winning culture, that's something that coaches have to have the experience of doing, I believe. And so
Mhm.
winning is so important in how you teach it. I think it's so important how you are able to coach and also inspire others. So
Mhm.
coaching isn't just not just about X's and O's. It's also about how you connect to this next generation. It's about
Mhm.
how you inspire them to want to be better, and all of
Mhm.
those things are really important to have a successful coach. And the more often a franchise changes coaches, the one step you take back further from being closer to a championship.
Lisa, I have a question for you because, first of all, that's so well said and mic drop. But I have a question.
Mhm.
Do you think it's possible for a firing like that? Not, excuse me, not a firing, a non renewal like that of Sandy Brandello or any coach at any franchise without the star players knowing, or did they have to be talked to? Do you think they had to be part of the decision?
Honestly, each franchise handles things differently. It depends on the communication from the players to ownership. And those are the parts where we can say this. We don't know all of that. We don't have access to that. We don't know if players were unhappy. We don't know if they love their coach. You know, there was times when I had coaches that I knew had no idea what they were doing, and they were my coach that I would never say to my teammates, because as a captain of a team, I am trying to get us all on the same page to win, and I'm always was always trying to do that. Even when I could see a coach is like, hmm, that's interesting. I can understand that your level of competency for this game is not very high. So that understanding, sometimes you don't know what it's like when you're in the trenches with a coach. Those players know whether we're on the outside looking, or how they won, or if they won based on the X's and O's, or if they won based on just fighting and going out there and getting it. Because we have won both. I've won both ways and understand that. I've been under coaches where we've huddled and been like, we got to go get this. Like, we got to go get this right now. We got to go do it, because I
Mhm.
don't know what he's talking about. But I've also won championships in the WNBA
Mhm.
where I thought Michael Cooper was excellent. Our coaching staff was excellent. We knew exactly what we were doing, what we were looking for. We understood our defenses, like our scouting reports were amazing. Our assistant coaches were amazing. So when you have those type of coaching staffs that are really spot on, you fight for them to stay and
Mhm.
be your coaches, and you let it be known. And so I'm just not sure where the disconnect is. But Sandy Brandello will have another job, obviously, with these other expansion teams.
Mhm.
But wow, what an amazing, I think, again, from the outside, I thought she was a very good coach who just, they decided to go in a different direction.
First of all, I think, Sandy just deserves a thank you. And I think the tone from the Liberty was very, gracious and had gratitude for her. The players all, toasted to her afterwards.
Yeah.
It took 28 years. It took the entire existence of their time in the league to get a championship.
Yeah.
And she brought the first. And
Sorry.
um,
But yeah.
she's the she's the way. I know you was in the way, boy. What? But yeah, no, she, the winningest coach all time. She's deserving of respect. As a New Yorker, I have great gratitude. Her as a professional broadcaster, she's
Mhm.
very easy to talk to, easy to cover, a joy. Like, she's super cool.
Yeah.
And like, is a winner in this league and internationally. So, like, there's nothing to question about her resume. I think um what the message that you might try to interpret from the Liberty is, perhaps they were thinking, you know while this is good, there's another level they can get to, and they want another
Yeah.
coach to take them there. And this
Mhm.
happens all over in sports. We see this
Right.
happen in the NBA all the time. Coach gets coach of the year, and next year they're out. But um from my experience in covering the Liberty, there were times this season where there were some really tough losses where they, post game, it would come from the coach's mouth, it would come from the player's mouth. We didn't have the right effort, the right urgency, and there were, also just some, like, bad, like, visually bad losses at home or to teams they shouldn't have lost to. And the amount of injuries that the Liberty had this season, is a very real situation that was out of people's control, that I think absolutely impacted what was possible this season. But the Liberty weren't the only team that was injured. Look at what Phoenix Mercury did half the season without their, big three. Look at the Valkyries. So you do see that there might be people squeezing out, doing more with less. And then also you could maybe say the fact that the Liberty had so much talent and could still come out there and play in games without looking passionate. It may make you think, is this team properly prepared coming out the locker room? Or, are we maximizing the amount of potential we have given the talent? Those are very hard decisions to make. Those are very bold decisions to make, but often in history, right? Like sometimes you have to be bold to succeed.
Yeah. And I know that New York, they definitely are about to make a move that's going to be a real money move, because they understand the urgency and they want to continue to win. They don't want to just ride on that one championship. So I look forward to see what the New York Liberty
that
do.
was petty, Lisa.
What? No,
you said they don't just want to ride on that one championship. Says
no,
the
they don't.
Great.
I'm just saying, because I've come to the Liberty game. I probably came to 5 games. Like the Liberty, listen, chef's kiss. The crowd, freaking Ellie is a star on her own. The team playing great, and it's like you guys are getting a steady digest of that team. We as fans that don't live in New York, we see here and there. It's like, oh man, they have all this potential on the roster, but listen, ownership is serious, and I really do believe that they are going to be making moves that are true money moves to make sure that the Liberty is able to compete year after year. And if that's without Sandy Brondello, then it is. But I'm sure some of these expansion teams will probably end up picking her up, because she is a really solid coach. But that is all the time that we have. Me and Ros be going overtime because we love talking. Ros, thank you again so much for joining me on Between the Lines. We will be back. Hopefully I'll get Ros to join me one more time, y'all. But we do have WNBA finals to cover. It's been so exciting. Ros, I can't thank you enough. Just so much fun. Make sure you guys follow Ros on Good Follow also on Instagram. She's doing amazing on her podcast as well. Thank you, love. You can find Between the Lines with Lisa Leslie on your YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. Between the Lines is part of the Just Women's Sports Network. Follow Just Women's Sports on all your favorite social channels to get all your latest women's sports news. And you can follow me, Lisa Leslie, at Lisa Leslie on IG, X, and TikTok. Between the Lines is produced by Taryn Penna and edited by Chris Wonder.